Welcome, everyone. My name is Ricky Sanders. I am here with Jim McCormick, and we're talking quarterbacks this week. I know my internet is having some issues, so I may look like I am broadcasting live from in a cave, but it's been a hectic day. It went out, it came back in. I live in the city of Chicago, so I'm at the mercy of my building's internet provider, unfortunately. But Jim looks clear as day, so at least you get to look at that beautiful face. As per usual, there it is. Smiling at you if you guys can see it. But before we get to talking about quarterbacks this week, I do think we need to tell you about this big game promotion we got going on. Of course, sponsored by rotocurve.com. That's what we're doing here. You can win free tickets plus fan experience events to this, the big game, 4-night trip to Houston, Texas, 2 tickets that are upgraded lower level end zone seats to the game, VIP tickets to the Antonio Brown celebrity game, which will be pretty topical this week, we'll find. Look at Jim there on a beach. Maybe we'll get the effects up in a second. But anyways, an all-you-can-eat tailgate, Prime Sports Club pregame party with Joe Montana and Warren Moon, and so much more. Go ahead and check out this promotion. And Jim, you may not be able to see me well, but you hear these words. I think Ben Roethlisberger is the play this week at the quarterback position. He has been so bad for so long. But like I said, that Antonio Brown celebrity game is pretty topical this week. What do you think of Ben Roethlisberger, and who do you like at quarterback?
I actually don't love Roethlisberger only because I understand, like, trend-wise, like there's a get-right kind of situation here at home. And actually, you know, the Ravens aren't the best secondary. They have this defensive reputation. But last week they even allowed the Eagles to move the ball. But, you know, my thing is he just doesn't look right. I think something's going on here with vertical passing with him. It's just a tape thing and just not looking that good right now. So I'm actually not huge on him. Also because, you know, the low total at home, it's not exactly great. I still like Tyrod enough in cash. I know it's like a weekly inclusion. But the point is just like if you're looking for 16 or 17 fantasy points at 5,400 on DraftKings, like he's there for you. So he's kind of I think the safe set it and forget it, and then you can build with a lot more capital with your skill position guys. But I was looking over, like there's this tier of guys between like maybe 6,600 and like 70 and $7,000 on DraftKings, just to use them as the market behavior, you know. And Aaron Rodgers sticks out to me. I know that's obviously a big name, but at home, they've been, you know, one of the best offenses over the past month, averaging over 3 points per drive, one of the best touchdown rates. And last week, obviously, he let investors down without the touchdown, and that 60-yard pass at the end certainly padded the yardage total. But, you know, at home against a Minnesota team that is sure, they're stingy, but even at their best earlier this season, he still put up 19 fantasy points on them. And it's just the price. I mean, he's below Rivers, he's below Luck. I like both of those guys in their situations, but at home, in really a must-win game. I mean, talk about narratives, but really, like, this is a playoff game for them. And this Minnesota team is unraveling. And the other thing is Minnesota's lack of ability to build drives, I think, plays into the kind of the dominant possession game for the Packers. I think they're going to have the ball most of the game just based on the fact that, you know, Minnesota has no running game. And obviously they don't really move the ball downfield. So I don't think it's really going to be a shootout, but I do think Rodgers gets his, like, 250 and 2, and that's kind of not his floor, but that's his median outcome. I just think he's cheaper than Luck and Rivers, like I said. I do like Breeze to an extent, but I'm not paying that price. So it's really, to me, in cash, it's Tyrod or Rodgers.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with Roethlisberger, even though I know he hasn't looked good, and this is why. I mean, 4 of his last 5 games have come on the road.
He's been Breeze at home, right? He's been Drew Brees at home this year, basically, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly. And I know home-road splits we don't love to rely on, but even if you don't believe in that sort of thing, and I know there are people who don't, I mean, the Ravens are a dominant running defense. You look at the Ravens, they play them, and this is kind of going to be an ongoing theme this week. It's like there are a bunch of divisional games. So this is the second time the teams are playing someone. We kind of have a little bit of data on this matchup. And the last time was November 6th. Le'Veon Bell was held to 13 fantasy points in that game, his lowest total of the season. And Roethlisberger threw the ball 45 times. Now, the next game he threw the ball 46 times, and since then he hasn't thrown the ball more than 36. In fact, it's been 36, 20, 36, 31, 36. So they've kind of limited, you know, his his reps, at least through the air, even in good matchups. I mean, there's been the Browns, there's been the Colts, but there's just something about at home. I mean, it's like a 30-point quarterback difference. It's over that. It's like 78 to 113, I believe, is the exact difference so far this year, and that's after a pretty similar total last year. So I just think that the Roethlisberger-Antonio Brown duo has been held down for too long. But I do think the direct alternative, I mean, you mentioned Tyrod. I love Tyrod in cash every week. I think Matthew Stafford would be the alternative against Dallas if you really don't like the way Roethlisberger has looked. I know Dallas dominates time of possession, but London Fletcher actually thinks that Matthew Stafford's the MVP of the league, which I don't agree with. But, I mean, there's definitely a case to be made that team has had absolutely no running game. And
Right.
I think this Dallas secondary is not as good as it seems. It's just the fact that they limit offenses being on the field so much that they're not exploited all that much. But I think Stafford, this is another one where he is going to get the attempts. And I know volume at the quarterback position doesn't necessarily mean production like it does at other positions, but I think Stafford's going to have the chance to sling it a bunch of times, and he's got a good chance to succeed. And the other guy I'm keeping a close eye on is Julio Jones. I think if he plays Matt Ryan, you got to at least consider. I know I don't love spending up, but even Roethlisberger, you look at his price on Fantasy Draft, $12,600. It really isn't that expensive. I mean, Matt Ryan is into the expensive tier at like $13,000, which is where is he on DraftKings? Hold on, let me get that. Roethlisberger 67 on DraftKings, Matt Ryan 7,200. So he's expensive, but he's not like crazy paying up for the Drew Breeses and at least all the top tier quarterback type prices. So I think those are the routes that I would go in cash. I'm pretty sold on Roethlisberger. I know he's been bad, but I just think that's going to keep his ownership percentage down. I think that's an advantage. Jim, who do you like in tournaments this week?
In tournaments, I'm willing to be a little bit more daring. I'm not even daring, but I just want to chase that same price tier around Rodgers. I just think the floor is a little bit lower for Luck. But here's the thing: the Colts have traveled well. They've scored the most points per drive on the road. They pass a ton. Basically, it's a volume-driven offense on the road. And the Raiders aren't very good on defense. So, this is what, a 53-point total. I think it's challenging that game in the Superdome for the highest total of the week. You got two kind of generous defenses matching up. The Raiders have allowed a touchdown on 24% of opposing drives. It's like 7th highest in the league. It's above average, of course. And really just the ceiling for Luck is really high. Again, a playoff kind of climate. And then Rivers, of course, the matchup with the Browns. You target the Browns. It's a safe setup. I'm not convinced the ceiling's super high for Rivers. I think, there's some issues here with this offense, in terms of, but again, it's the opponent, right? I mean, they're allowing 30%. They're allowing opponents to score on 30% of their drives, which is ridiculous. I mean, every third drive, an opponent scoring a touchdown on Cleveland. So I think this is actually a sneaky dark horse week where Cleveland could actually compete, just because all the Vegas trends and all the predictive models like 538, they're all offering kind of Cleveland their best chance. This is it, but I still don't think it matters. RG3 is not going to move the ball. So those are two high ceiling guys. And then Drew Brees at home. I know you mentioned Matt Ryan. I dig Ryan, but I think, on the road here and Carolina, they're not very good, but they have been playing a little bit better defense lately, even without Kuechly. I think what it is Mario Addison and Kawan Short, their pass rush is back a little bit. So my thing really is just that Drew Brees at home, I know he had that 2-week stretch, and one of those games was against this Tampa team. But at home, the rates are just ridiculous. I know the home road splits, they can be wonky, but over the large sample, Drew Brees' home road splits have been bankable. So it's the best home offense in the NFL outside of Atlanta. And I just think, getting a share of that for $7,400, it's not that elite $8,000 price that we were paying earlier in the year for kind of home superstar quarterbacks. So I think you can pay for Brees. And when we get to running backs, I like enough running backs that are in that affordable $6,000-$7,000 range that I think you can get Brees and still get RB1s.
Yeah, I agree with you. We're going to get to running back this week, but it's not like the past few where I think you need to pay up for Le'Veon and David Johnson.
Right.
I don't even know if you have to pay up for one of them, let alone both of them this week, which is definitely a different trend than we've been
Exactly.
we've been dealt with recently. And I love that Andrew Luck call. I mean, we'll get to wide receivers, but I think T.Y. Hilton is one of the best matchups of the week.
Yep.
The Oakland defense, both their starting outside corners have been fantastic this year. But, inside, that's where they can be beaten. So I think Andrew Luck and T.Y. Hilton have a big week this week. And another set of receivers / quarterback I like this week, if you're going in tournaments, I mean, Blake Bortles is the bare minimum on DraftKings. And I know you talk about a guy who hasn't passed the eye test whatsoever, but I just feel like in the right matchups, they still have to have upside. I still feel like Allen Robinson, at least against a lower tier passing defense, is still at least a viable option. Marquise Lee, TJ Yeldon, they've got enough weapons. And you look at the matchup earlier this year, Blake Bortles threw the ball 54 times. And I think this could be a game where he ends up, as a garbage time hero once again, even though it's at home. But on the road, I mean, 32.7 fantasy points was as good as it got for Bortles so far this year. I'm not suggesting he's going to do it again, but in tournaments at the absolute minimum, I think you got to take a shot on that. If he gets you 20 fantasy points, all of a sudden you're looking pretty good with the rest of your, salary to spend. I like that Aaron Rodgers call at home against Minnesota, who gave up 250 and a touchdown to Andrew Luck last week. Now on the road in Green Bay, one of the most difficult places to play. And then I'm pretty much just on my cash guys. I mean, I have a pretty limited I think we'll get to tight end this week is really limited, or at least we'll gaze over it. But I think quarterback's just as limited this week, where there's
I think so too. It's a tight tier. Like I only have two cash guys. I've Tyrod and Rodgers, and I really only have three tournament guys in addition to Rodgers, which is Breeze, Luck, and Rivers. I know those are all big names, but like you said, I don't think you need to get too creative here.
Yeah, the only other guy that I would mention is Matt Barkley, who looked really good last week.
Right.
And I think that directly correlates to the return of Alshon Jeffrey. I mean, you look at the wide receiving tier, or core at least, three of their receivers finished in the top 7 fantasy points last week on the Sunday slate only. That was kind of amazing.
Well, they pushed the ball vertically. He's got the second highest. I mean, he's not qualified for the quarterback rank yet, but just over the last month, he's got the second highest average depth of target. Like they're not dumping the ball off. They're pushing the ball downfield. So yeah, Barkley, he's so cheap and he still has that tournament upside. So he might be the Tyrod of tournaments.
Exactly. I mean, you've got a couple minimum guys, which we know is the ones I like to use. Otherwise, I think you go Roethlisberger, Stafford, or Matt Ryan, but that is pretty dependent on whether or not Julio Jones plays. And then we mentioned
he practiced again today, so.
Yeah, so if he plays, I definitely like that matchup more. And then we got, some other fringe options. Rodgers against Minnesota. I don't think Luck's a fringe option. I like him too, but I'm with you. I think that the quarterback landscape this week is pretty limited. Is there anything else you got to say about quarterback that we missed?
No, I think this is it. I think it's time. I think it's like we said, it's a kind of a tight tier, and but I wouldn't be afraid. I don't think you have to go truly bargain to get creative in cash. Like I'm okay. It's like I said, Tyrod or Rodgers is who I'm actually comfortable with. Like those, I'm not going to get that creative in cash.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think Roethlisberger is who it's going to be for me, and we'll see how it goes. But that's all for us for quarterbacks. But before we go, Big Game 51, rotocurve.com/big game. Win free tickets plus the fan experience events. Of course, you get the 2 upgraded seats and much, much more. So go ahead, rotocurve.com/big-game. Stay tuned because Jim and I still have a lot more to talk about when it comes to Week 16.